This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Chinese President Xi Jinping embarks on a four-nation tour beginning in Spain. In more evidence of a widening political space in Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed hosts talks with 80 opposition leaders. And the latest political developments ahead of presidential elections in the DRC. Hello everyone, welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories and others in just a moment, but first, Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. South Africa's national carrier needs over $500 million just to remain afloat. And China pledges its support for African countries to exploit their maritime resources. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming up for you in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we begin this broadcast in Spain, where Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived at the capital, Madrid, for a state visit. He will meet with the Spanish King, a Prime Minister, and the Presidents of the Senate and the Congress of Deputies. China is Spain's largest non-European Union trade partner. President Xi's stop in Madrid comes as the two countries mark 45 years of diplomatic ties. Spain is the first stop on a four-nation diplomatic tour. After a three-day stay there, he will attend the G20 summit in Buenos Aires, where he will also pay a state visit to Argentina. He will then head to Panama and Portugal. And for more on how the two countries are expected to deepen cooperation during the president's visit, earlier we spoke to our correspondent Alan Goodman in Madrid.
In this $30 billion trade relationship between the two countries, it's mostly in China's favor. There's a $21 billion trade deficit that Spain has with China because Spain is importing a lot more. So China now opening its doors to Spain and other countries to bring in more of their products. We expect to see that. Spanish officials describing to reporters a short while ago that about 18 bilateral agreements between the governments and businesses will be signed on this trip, including two which will allow for Spanish table grapes to be exported en masse to China, and also for Spanish hams and ham products, including some of the Spain's gourmet cured ham, smoked and cured ham, which is a favorite for a growing number of people in China, to be exported there. This official explaining, a member of the Spanish Prime Minister's team, saying that a lot of times the details in these kinds of negotiations go on and on and on, and then when the two leaders, President Xi and the Spanish Prime Minister, agree that they're finally going to meet, those details finally get resolved, and that's what's happened with these two food products from Spain that'll be going that way. There will also be talk of more investment, so a whole row and number of economic issues, as well as diplomatic and cultural issues. There'll be an agreement to have more Spanish language courses taught in China, and so a whole range of issues here on his first stop of this four-country tour.
The Spanish daily newspaper ABC has published an article by Xi Jinping titled "Stride into a New Era, Work Together to Create Brilliance." In the piece, President Xi says the world is facing unprecedented challenges. The main purposes of his visit are to discuss enhancing international social solidarity, global governance, and promoting world peace and stability. Since Spain and China established diplomatic ties 45 years ago, they have adhered to the principles of mutual respect, equal treatment, and mutually beneficial cooperation. In the article, President Xi stresses that both sides should promote their comprehensive strategic partnership, deepen cooperation, and work together to contribute to world peace and prosperity. This year also marks the 15th anniversary of the establishment of the China-EU Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Calling Spain a good friend and EU partner, President Xi has expressed his hope that the nation will continue to play an active role in promoting China-EU ties. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says his meeting with more than 80 opposition leaders has been highly productive. They've discussed opening up the political landscape as well as reforming legislation to allow opposition parties more freedom to operate. CGTN's Girumchala has more.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali has appealed to opposition leaders to focus on the future rather than dwell on the past.
We have so many historic problems. There are no outright winners or losers. Everyone has suffered. However, if we go back and forth and reopen old wounds, we risk ruining the progress that we have made.
The Prime Minister has underlined the important role all political parties have to play in the country's future.
Everyone here is vital. Whatever their ideas are, they will have an opportunity to be heard. After that, we shall discuss how to implement them.
At least 80 opposition party representatives have attended this meeting, the first of its kind in Ethiopia. Some have voiced their opinions and recommendations on the way forward.
I appeal to the Prime Minister to help us form fewer groups. He has an opportunity to help us unify. We would like to form 3 groups instead of 80.
The debate should continue on a much larger scale. It needs to reach all corners of the country and involve all Ethiopians.
Reforms to the electoral law and other legislation have dominated the talks.
The only way we will agree on elections is if we all play by the rules. We need to appoint a referee to oversee the process, and we shall all be governed by the law and that referee. If not, no one will be 100% satisfied.
Analysts say this meeting is an important milestone on the path towards democracy. There are many challenges ahead, but political leaders are confident about the country's future. Grumjara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, let's now go to the DRC, where Congolese opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi returned home to Kinshasa on Tuesday, greeted by tens of thousands of supporters as he kicked off his campaign to replace longtime President N4 Joseph Kabila in December's elections. Tshisekedi arrived home from a trip to the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, where he signed an agreement with Vital Kamerhe to join forces as they head to the polls. According to the Nairobi agreement, if Tshisekedi wins the presidency, he will make Kamerhe his prime minister. 21 candidates are registered to run in the race to replace a current president, Joseph Kabila. Meanwhile, President Kabila's chosen successor in the upcoming presidential election in DR Congo has unveiled his campaign platform. Making his first public remarks, Emmanuel Shadary told supporters that he would reinforce the authority of the state, diversify the economy and create job opportunities. Meanwhile, the African Union Peace and Security Council is urging the European Union to lift sanctions against ruling party candidate Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary, saying the lifting of sanctions will help lead to free, fair, credible and peaceful elections in the DRC. Shadary set out an $86 billion 5-year development plan for the sprawling Central African country. He made the pledges 3 days ahead of the official start of campaigning.
I was chosen as a candidate for the presidential election by President Joseph Kabila, a Katangese. Katanga has given me everything.
Meanwhile, a formal medical trial has begun in the Democratic Republic of Congo using 4 promising Ebola treatments. So far, 160 patients have been treated with these drug therapies. The U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases is driving the trial.
So MAB 114 stands for monoclonal antibody number 114. And what it is a product that was derived from a patient who recovered from Ebola. And from their blood, we derived what's called a monoclonal antibody, a natural product that's an antibody, a protein that the body makes to protect itself against different types of infections. So we produce this monoclonal antibody, which we're calling MAB, or monoclonal antibody 114, and we're using it now in a clinical trial in the DRC to determine if it's actually a good treatment for Ebola. Not a prevention of Ebola, but actually a treatment of Ebola.
South Africa is due to announce its next AIDS drug tender next month. The tender is a vital step in switching HIV patients to a new regimen. The government is looking for a cheaper but more effective alternative to the 3-drug cocktail currently being used.
At about 7.2 million, South Africa has the world's largest number of people living with HIV. It also has the world's largest AIDS treatment program. Over 4 million patients benefit from state-provided HIV drugs. The upcoming tender will see patients change over to a dolutegravir-based regimen. This is a cheaper and more effective alternative to the 3-drug combination currently in use. The planned switch will also expand HIV treatment to more patients. The current tender was extended by a year to allow enough pharmaceutical companies to register their products. There were also delays due to safety concerns. Dolutegravir offers several advantages. Experts say likelihood of patients developing resistance to the drug is extremely low.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up on the program. The visit by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince to North Africa sparks protests over his alleged involvement in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. And we update you on the latest efforts to tackle the Boko Haram insurgency in the Lake Chad Basin.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt,
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent, and the unique point at which 2 great oceans meet. Now on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
Well, let's return now to Ethiopia, where Prime Minister Ahmed Abiy has been meeting with opposition leaders. He has called that meeting highly productive. They've been discussing opening up the political landscape further. Well, we can now cross over to CGTN's Girum Chala for more insights into that political development in Ethiopia. He's joining me live from the capital, Addis Ababa. Girum, it is quite a political statement there by the Prime Minister. Exactly how monumental is this meeting with the opposition leaders, and what are the key highlights from that meeting?
Beatrice, as you understand, Ethiopia has been a bit of intolerant, as many would like to call it, when it comes to incorporating other political parties in the leadership of the country, or perhaps holding fair and free elections in this country. But today's discussion is remarkable. It's one of a kind, as analysts would like to call it. Some of the most important discussions between the Prime Minister and opposition party leaders were reform on the electoral law of the country, how to be patient with one another, and above all, widening the political space in this country so that democracy can also prevail. The Prime Minister has asked opposition leaders, instead of you becoming 80 plus in this country and try to address your own perspectives and issues into the political space of the country, he asked them to come together, perhaps be one or two, so that they can strongly antagonize, they can strongly oppose the ruling party itself. Also, the opposition leaders have raised their concerns of operational space in Ethiopia or security forces working against them and this and that. But at the end of the day, the discussion concluded with an understanding that this should convert itself into a forum for more discussion, for continual deliberation between the ruling party and opposition leaders, more like serving the country than serving a particular party's interest, Beatrice.
Kirum, on that previous intolerance that you have just mentioned, are we going to expect going forward in terms of political engagement that the state is likely to be more tolerant now of dissenting views?
So, Beatrice, the Prime Minister told opposition leaders at the beginning of the meeting that there is no topic that is restricted to be raised here. We are here to freely discuss about any matter you think is important in this forum. And also he said that from now on, whatever happened in the past, we should not dwell into it. We should look forward for the benefit of the people of this country and for the benefit of the political parties themselves who think that they have better plans for Ethiopia's prosperity or democracy in this country. So yes, analysts also support the fact that the beginning that we've seen today, the discussion between all opposition parties, more or less, if you might call it that way, them and the head of a state of the country, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, also the head of Ethiopia's ruling party, EPRDF, is a wonderful beginning. There is light at the end of the tunnel. All of them are optimistic that perhaps soon enough elections will be fair and square in this country, free at the same time, and no one will be chased away of the country because of a different political opinion. There is hope. Beatrice.
All right, Girum Chala joining us there from Addis Ababa. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Egypt on a two-day state visit. Bin Salman is touring Arab nations in a bid for regional support ahead of his appearance at the G20 summit. International criticism of the young royal has been mounting over his alleged involvement in the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Adil Mahrouri has more.
More than 100 Egyptian journalists have signed a petition condemning Mohammed bin Salman's visit for his alleged involvement in the murder of Washington Post writer Jamal Khashoggi. Nonetheless, the Saudi Crown Prince has been warmly welcomed by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi.
Bin Salman wants to paint a picture of himself as a global leader ahead of the G20 summit in Argentina. There is a wave of criticism against him. Turkey has indirectly hinted at his involvement in Khashoggi's murder, and the CIA has confirmed the Crown Prince's participation, despite Saudi Arabia's absolute rejection of these claims.
Since Khashoggi's death, Egypt, Saudi Arabia's strongest North African ally, has shown confidence in local investigations. And during meetings on Tuesday, el-Sisi and the Crown Prince have confirmed they are working to deepen economic and political partnerships.
Bilateral ties are of course part of the program, but they're not top of the agenda. The main purpose of this visit is to confirm Egypt's support for Saudi Arabia on the international stage, to stress that Egypt supports the kingdom's pursuit of justice in the death of Jamal Khashoggi.
Annual trade between the two Red Sea neighbors is estimated at about $6.2 billion. Riyadh is the largest Arab investor in Egypt, while Cairo has investments in 1,300 projects in the kingdom. The two countries also tend to support each other's stance on regional conflicts. Egypt is participating in Saudi Arabia's coalition against the Houthis in Yemen, while Riyadh supports Cairo's position on Libya.
Cairo is Mohammed bin Salman's third stop. The tour appears to be more focused on showing the Crown Prince being welcomed by Arab leaders, an indirect display of the support he has in the region despite the ongoing Khashoggi investigation. Adil Mahrouri, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, Prince Salman is meeting resistance ahead of his trip to Tunisia. Dozens of journalists and activists have rallied against his visit and are calling for further demonstrations. Since Khashoggi's death, the young royal has received a backlash from several rights groups. Saudi Arabia continues to insist the prince is in no way involved in the journalist's murder. Nigeria's defense minister is due to meet his Chadian counterpart to discuss forming another regional frontline to stop the resurgence of Boko Haram in the Lake Chad basin. The move follows escalating attacks on both military and civilian targets in recent weeks. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekala.
A series of deadly attacks by Boko Haram on villages and the worst on a military base in Metele near Nigeria's border with Chad. More than 100 government soldiers were reportedly killed and large stockpiles of weapons carted away by ISIL-leaning faction of Boko Haram. Nigeria's government had insisted the group is defeated and all it was doing was a mop-up exercise, but the scale of attacks seen recently now threaten to undermine those claims. It appears once again Boko Haram is exploiting to full advantage the lack of defense within the Chad basin to rebuild its strength. A regional front involving mostly Nigeria, Chad and Niger is widely credited for putting Boko Haram on the back foot.
Nigeria was the only country footing the bill of the multinational joint task force. Maybe the funding dried up. We're not sure what the reasons were. And then that was the time that the Nigerian government should have looked into the reasons and then made sure, because these countries are critical to the campaign. If these countries are not there, then it will be an open border, and these guys will be coming in both with human and then with the equipment I mentioned. So clearly, somebody dropped the ball, and I'm happy that President Buhari has sent his Minister of Defense in terms, almost on an emergency, trip to Chad.
President Buhari himself is expected to attend an annual military conference in the northeast this week. After the summit, he's expected to take time off to boost the morale of troops fighting the insurgents. He urgently needs his army on the offensive to roll back the insurgents who are reportedly controlling some territories in the northeast and seeking to expand their area of influence.
If you speak of northern and eastern Borno state, there appears to be a rebound by especially the Islamic State in West Africa province. Its recruitment base is expanding. Its ability to attack is expanding, mainly because it has raided armories of the Nigerian military and now has more weapons. The morale of the Nigerian soldiers is dropping. It's at a level that was similar to what we experienced in 2014 and early 2015.
The rise in Boko Haram attacks could be a tragic turn of events for Nigeria generally, but it will also play into the hands of President Buhari's political rivals to attack the cornerstone of his administration. Should things span out of control, he'll be left extremely vulnerable. But for now, the best way to silence his critics is defeating the insurgents. Kelechi Emekala, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
To environmental matters now, and many parts of Africa are at risk of experiencing severe effects of climate change. In Malawi, rising temperatures coupled with deforestation are causing water bodies to dry up, threatening many livelihoods.
Just 4 months earlier, the fishing harbour at Kachulu on the western shores of Lake Chilwa in Malawi was bustling with fishermen and traders. Presently, hundreds of fishing boats sit marooned on cracked dry mud as vultures fly overhead.
I ferry people from Chizi Island to Kachulu, but the drying up at the lake has pushed my colleagues and me out of business. At the moment, we have no source of income because of this problem.
The drying up of the lake has put us in an awkward situation. We had a good fish market. Now we are idle because there is no fish. I am here just to look after these facilities, hoping that the lake will recover.
Chilwa, the country's second largest lake after Lake Malawi, is shallow and silent, and particularly prone to seasonal variations in water levels. The last time it got so dry was during a drought in 1991.
Climate change contributes to
to the current recessions that we are experiencing. Because you can see that in 2012 there was a recession where the lake lost about 80% of its water. Then it recovered in 2013, but not fully. So since then, every year we've been experiencing these recessions.
1.5 million people live around the Lake Chilwa Basin, which is one of the most densely populated areas in southern Africa. The lake is a key source of livelihood for area residents.
Before the lake dried up, I was able to make 5,000 kwacha or more per day. Now we have no business because of what has happened to the lake.
The lake once provided about 30% of the country's fish and is home to nearly 200 unique waterbird species. Records show it has dried completely several times in the last 100 years, with every dry spell longer than the previous one. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Meanwhile, in Senegal, French newspaper Le Monde hosted the 4th edition of its Africa debate. The conference discussed the state of higher education in Africa. Over 200 Senegalese and French participants took part in the conference. According to recent estimates, there will be 9.6 million African college graduates by 2020. But unemployment rate among this educated lot remains high. At the end of the conference, experts compiled proposals to help strengthen both the educational system and increase job opportunities.
As students, our place is not on the streets, but in schools. When public schools don't have enough space for us, we have to enroll in private schools, and not everyone can afford the fees.
There are many new teaching methods. If we can promote them among young Africans, it would be a positive initiative.
To Libya now, where the Tripoli Museum is hosting an exhibition of the work of 2 local Arabic and Islamic calligraphers. Cultural life has slowly been picking up in Libya as the security threat from jihadists declines. Let's take a look.
This is the former palace of King Idris. Now it's used for exhibitions, a rare treat in the Libyan capital, Tripoli. Ali Al-Busefi and his wife Zainab Al-Bashari are showcasing their work here. The two are on a mission to promote Islamic calligraphy in Libya.
This is our first exhibition and we wanted it to take place somewhere special. This type of calligraphy is not common in Libya, so we are hoping to encourage it as a new artistic technique. We have mosques full of Islamic motifs, the doors, the tombstones, the old city. So why not incorporate them in paintings like this?
Ali is a trained accountant, but has been practicing calligraphy since 2007. His wife is a professor of calligraphy. The pair make a living teaching people how to depict verses from the Quran in the ancient style.
We have lived through difficult times, but our message is that working in the arts is considered peace, because art in a time of war is a means to peace.
The exhibition is receiving widespread praise from art lovers.
I really like the idea that a Libyan calligrapher and her husband cooperate to create art. It's a lot of work. You can spend months on a single painting. So seeing the detail up close and understanding how the artists have dedicated their lives to the practice is impressive.
Calligraphy developed on the Arabian Peninsula after the arrival of Islam. But it is little known in Libya, as former leader Muammar Gaddafi discouraged Islamic culture. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
And here's a quick recap now of the headlines this hour. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in the capital, Madrid, for a state visit. He will meet with the Spanish King, Prime Minister and the Presidents of the Senate and the Congress of Deputies. After a 3-day stay in Spain, President Xi will attend the G20 summit in Buenos Aires, where he will also pay a state visit to Argentina. He'll then head to Panama and Portugal. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Egypt on a 2-day state visit. Bin Salman is touring Arab nations in a bid for regional support ahead of his appearance at the G20 summit. International criticism of the young royal has been mounting over his alleged involvement in the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says his meeting with more than 80 opposition leaders has been highly productive. They've discussed opening up the political landscape as well as reforming legislation to allow opposition parties more freedom to operate. The Prime Minister has already welcomed back exiled opposition and separatist groups and also released many political prisoners. And Nigeria's Defense Minister is due to meet his Chadian counterpart to discuss forming another regional frontline to stop the resurgence of Boko Haram in the Lake Chad Basin. The move follows escalating attacks on both military and civilian targets in recent weeks. And that's a look at your headlines. Let's now go to Ramanyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. We'll tell you why South Africa's national carrier needs more than $500 million just to remain afloat. And China pledges support for African countries that want to exploit their maritime resources. All that and more is coming up next.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Let's start in the aviation sector. South African Airways needs a total of $540 million from next month to fund its operations into 2019. SA Chief Executive Riani Jarana has been explaining to South African legislators his plans to turn around this cash-strapped airline. The plan includes cutting jobs and routes in an effort to turn a profit by 2021. South African Airways has not generated a profit since 2011 and it survives on state guarantees. Finance Minister Tito Mboweni had initially proposed that the airline be shut down entirely. Lenders, however, have declined to issue new loans to the carrier to plug its deficit. The national carrier has been projected to make a loss of $376 million in the 2019 fiscal year and another $137 million loss in 2020 before swinging back into black. Over in Zimbabwe, business owners have welcomed government plans to implement policies that will turn around the Southern African economy. Private sector players are equally optimistic about Finance Minister Mtulinkulbe's 2019 budget. Now, that budget did cut growth forecasts down to 3.1% from 4% that had initially been forecast as GDP growth for 2018. Mining, agriculture and manufacturing are expected to be the key growth drivers. Zimbabwean traders, however, also want a stake in developing policies that they say will support their businesses' growth.
If you also look at the general performance of the economy, despite many other challenges that the economy has faced, the economy has continued to grow. We are looking at the impediments to the ease of doing business and trying to address those. I think we will also be improving our competitiveness as a country, because remember, one of the challenges that we're faced is dwindling flow of export earnings. And that is an area which we need to continue to focus on, so that we can actually capacitate those areas that are generating foreign currency for the country, because it is that foreign currency which would then be directed towards the productive sector.
The first Global Blue Economy Conference is underway in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Over 18,000 representatives from government, civil society, the private sector and financial institutions, all involved in maritime resources, are attending this event. They're expected to come up with strategies to harness water resources to improve the lives of people in developing nations. Now, the delegates will also be learning how to best leverage the latest innovations, scientific advances and best practices to build prosperity while conserving maritime resources for future generations. At this event, China has announced plans to work further with countries here in Africa, particularly targeting tech and innovation upgrades in oceanic industries.
During the FOCAC summit in Beijing this September, China and African countries have reached agreements on promoting the blue economy. At the same time, taking the opportunities of practicing One Belt, One Road initiatives. China will strengthen its strategic cooperation with African countries, sharing ocean economy knowledge and expertise, discussing cooperation plans on ocean environment protection, fishing, and ocean tourism.
Let's move on to France now, where a rise in taxes on fuel has triggered quite a few protests among citizens around the country. The country's president, Emmanuel Macron, however, says he will not be changing tack on this new energy policy, but he does acknowledge that the concerns have been raised. His comments follow more than 2 weeks of sometimes violent demonstrations by these so-called yellow vest protesters, not just in Paris, but also in other cities around the country. Now, the unrest has left some Parisian boulevards very badly vandalized as well. Speaking of oil issues, global prices for that commodity have fallen below $60 a barrel as Saudi Arabia increases its production to an all-time high. Now, ever since the most recent peaks in early October, oil prices have lost about a third or so of their value. Traders have also taken a very cautious approach ahead of an upcoming G20 summit in Argentina and the OPEC meeting that will follow on the 6th of December in Austria. Now, the leaders of the G20 countries are meeting this weekend on the 30th of November with a trade war between the top two economies in the world, China and the US, right at the top of the agenda. The US President Donald Trump has put pressure on his political ally, Saudi Arabia, not to cut production. Low oil prices are bound to negatively affect economic recovery efforts in places like Nigeria and Angola, both of which are key crude producers. The world's longest freight rail line connects the Chinese city of Yiwu with Madrid in Spain. It's a valuable link between the world's largest wholesale market for small consumer goods and Europe's commodity centre. The rail line has also helped to boost economic cooperation and cultural exchanges between the two sides. Take a look.
Yiwu, China's mega wholesale center, is growing globally. Some 70,000 small merchants in this international market sell made-in-Yiwu goods to over 200 countries and regions, with the Belt and Road logistics system spanning in all directions. For Yu Ling and her handmade Chinese dolls, it boosts sales and cuts costs.
We sell products to many countries around the world. The freight train is very safe for cargo. It has shortened the transit time and sped up capital turnover. One of my customers says it relieves cash flow pressure and brings big savings for delivery.
At Yiwu Railway Station, small commodities and other cargo clear customs and inspection before traveling to overseas markets along the Silk Route Railway. This freight railway between China and Spain opened in 2014. Since then, trains have made over 500 trips in both directions, carrying some 45,000 containers. Its journeys in the first half of 2018 were double compared to the same period last year. The line takes only 1/3 the travel time of shipping by sea and costs 1/5 that of air freight.
Services has been improved and the coordination has also been enhanced greatly. So the train has been providing with better timeline and better services.
There are currently 2 trains a week linking the two nations. The tracks wind through 9 countries before arriving in Spain. Some in Spain say the Yiwu-Madrid railway is bringing enormous benefits to their country.
Well, there is no question that there are a lot of economic benefits. On the one hand, with respect to exports, Spain can benefit from the growing demand from Chinese consumers for European products of quality. And in fact, Spain has been exporting large amounts of meat, olive oil, wine, and other food and beverage products. So it will represent a big opportunity for Spanish companies to use this to transport to China.
The total import and export value directly generated by the railway line has reached more than $3.5 billion US. Operators hope the service becomes even faster and brings more benefits in the future.
I'm very much convinced that the EU-Madrid railway train will have a very good future, because that we are making great efforts to provide better services and to make it shorter and shorter for the timeline in the future.
The tracks follow the ancient Silk Route, proving that what's old is new and great ideas never go out of style. Mark Fontes, CGTN.
I'll leave you there for the time being. Here's what's coming up at the top of the hour, though. We'll be looking at the details of this unfolding court battle between South Africa's Private Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan, and the leader of the hard left EFF party, Julius Malema. The details on those stories and plenty more coming to you live from Johannesburg at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here in the program. Here's what's coming up. We'll tell you why an ancient city discovered near Johannesburg could affect the land ownership debate in South Africa. Stay with us.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
The discovery of an ancient African city outside Johannesburg may be pertinent in the debate around land ownership in South Africa. Using laser technology, Quineng City is estimated to date back to the 15th century. It was inhabited by the Bakwena people long before the arrival of the first European settlers. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
University professor Karim Sadar stumbled upon the Quineng City ruins on an early morning walk in the Seker Bosrand Hills, a vast area in the south of Johannesburg.
I kept stumbling over rocks. I kept hurting my shin, stubbing my toes and falling on my face, and I kept thinking, what are all these rocks here? So I looked into it further, and they're all stone walls, lots of old ruins.
The remnants of the architectural stone walls, now buried under vegetation and a colonial history, dates back to the 15th century. It was more than 200 years before the European settlers set foot on South African soil.
For Bakwena of Bamari Apohole, this means a lot to us. It's a huge finding, and more especially that it's a scientific find. It is history that lies in oral history. It's a story that is told by our grandparents. But now that the scholars and academics has come to the fore and put this vast information into evidence that can't be disputed by anyone.
It's believed that at one point about 10,000 people lived in Quineng City. They would have been part of the Botswana people of Bakwena Mahe Apohole, likely farmers ruled by a king.
Through the colonial times, essentially this knowledge of cities, of civilizations, African civilization, were downplayed and denigrated. The idea of their forefathers having built a city here before any contact with the Europeans, I think, has been a morale booster, if nothing else. It's given them a great deal of pride in their own history.
There has to be a discussion between those powers, be in the government and the Land Claims Commission in this instance, and Bakwena Bamagapao. But because of it's a build-up area, there's no one who's going to tell us not to claim it. We will claim it, and we will forever fight for this.
Archaeologists believe they have only scratched the surface. There may be several other lost African cities still to be found in a 700-kilometer radius between Johannesburg and the Northern Cape. It could help put an end to a heated debate around who owns the land in South Africa. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, 2 ancient stone coffins have been unveiled in Egypt. One of them is an intact sarcophagus that contains a well-preserved mummy of a woman named Tuya. It dates back to the 18th century, 18th Egyptian dynasty.
The 2 stone coffins have been unveiled in Luxor. They were discovered earlier this month by a French-led mission in the northern region of El Asasif.
We found almost 2 intact wooden coffins in perfect condition of preservation with flowers in the top of them. Then we opened them. We found that the mummies in perfect condition of preservation. Reading the cartouches, reading the names, the hieroglyphic, we found that the name is Badi Iset. What does it mean? It means back to the dynasty number 25 or 26. And he was the high priest of the god Amun.
A tomb belonging to Thorat If, the overseer of the mummification process, has also been unveiled. 300 meters of rubble has been carefully removed over a 5-month period to uncover the tomb. It dates back to the Middle Kingdom, almost 4,000 years ago.
The French archaeologists are working here on a very famous tomb called Padi Imen Ibet. This tomb is number 3. While they were working here on the tomb, they found 2 coffins at the gate. One sarcophagus was Rishi style, which dates back to the 17th dynasty, while the other sarcophagus was from the 18th dynasty.
Ancient Egyptians mummified their dead to preserve their bodies for the afterlife. Egypt has opened more than a dozen ancient tombs this year, in a bid to boost tourism.
Meanwhile, Egyptian movie stars and filmmakers are very proud of this year's edition of the Cairo International Film Festival. The 8-day event included an expanded list of awards to attract a wider audience. Here is Adel Mahroui with more.
It holds the same name, yet it looks completely different this year. More elegant, a glamorous setup design, and more prestigious, standing up to its long history. After years of abandonment, famous movie stars and filmmakers are once again attracted to the Cairo International Film Festival. 60 countries are participating this year, with 160 films in numerous competitions the festival is holding this year.
I am very happy with this edition. I love all the activities this year. There's a huge number of audience. There are good lectures. There was a marvelous experience I had 2 days ago. A display of the newest cinema technology and filming gears. This is all a great addition to this festival.
Cairo is marking the 40th edition of one of the biggest and oldest film festivals in Africa. A special exhibition extends throughout the week-long event, recording the history of the festival.
I think it's a very good edition. It looks totally different. A 100% makeover. It's now unequal to all international film festivals. We still need to work on the content. We need to attract global films to premiere in the Cairo Film Festival.
One of the new creations in this edition is an Audience Award. It's a $20,000 prize given to the most voted for film out of the 16 productions in the main competition in an attempt to engage more of Cairo's audience with the festival.
The main purpose of the Audience Award is to encourage distribution and display of films which the audience prefers. They will vote using a trending Chinese mobile application called TikTok. The prize will be split between the producer and the local distributor of the film. So if a foreign film is chosen, we can fund screening it on as many screens as possible.
With the new and young management, the festival is offering a variety of events to its visitors, from a critics' week to Arab cinema discussions and opportunities to engage with global filmmakers. The events of the 40th Cairo International Film Festival extend until Thursday, November 29. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. The race to qualify for the knockout phase heats up in the UEFA Champions League. Nigeria and Cameroon are currently facing each other in Accra, aiming to be the first team to the 2018 Women's Africa Cup of Nations final. Neither side was able to break the deadlock after regulation time, and the tie then went into extra regulation time. Meanwhile, in the second semi-final, South Africa take on Mali, targeting the second slot in Saturday's final. The four-time runners-up, the Banyana, are chasing their first final in the competition since 2012. Their competition, however, is Mali, a side enjoying their best performance in the competition to date. The West Africans have not gone beyond the group stages until this year's tournament and could extend their stellar run with a win later this evening in Cape Coast. And in the UEFA Champions League on Tuesday night, Italian Serie A champions Juventus host Valencia in Group H. They need only a draw to secure their spot in the knockout stages. The old lady have been in fantastic form so far this season. Their addition of Cristiano Ronaldo certainly did not hurt, and they're among the favourites in the continental club competition.
Here are Ronaldo and his teammates. The Portuguese gives the camera something to look at by finding the net from behind the goal line. Juve are coming off a comfortable 2-0 victory over Spal in the domestic league on Saturday for their 12th win in 13 games. The old lady are not expected to have much trouble against the Spanish La Liga side tonight. They beat Valencia 2-0 in their group opener on September 19th, when Ronaldo received his first red card in the competition ever for appearing to pull Jason Murillo's hair. The 33-year-old will be relied on as usual tonight, but not for any hairstyling.
Preferisco che Ronaldo giochi come sta giocando.
I would really like to see him continue playing as he has been, playing like an assist man and a top scorer. He is doing great things. Overall, he plays with great quality, and this allows the squad to create chances and score goals.
Another Spanish club making the trip to Italy is three-time defending champions Real Madrid. Santiago Solari's men are under pressure once again this season following a 3-0 defeat at Eibar in the Spanish La Liga on Saturday. Meanwhile, there are reports that captain Sergio Ramos failed a doping test after the 2017 Champions League final, but Solari firmly defended Ramos's reputation.
Sergio Ramos is ante todo un hombre honesto.
Sergio Ramos is, first of all, an honest man. He is a symbol, not just for Real Madrid or Spanish football, but for the entire sporting world in Spain. So it seems to me that it should be everybody's duty to protect him, and that is the media's duty as well. Journalism is there for us to seek the truth and inform people about the truth. Then you have opinions or positions, but the truth is not debatable, especially when a person's honor is at stake.
The other game in Group H tonight sees Manchester United hosting Swiss side Young Boys. Jose Mourinho's United will advance with a win if Juve don't lose to Valencia. Man City visit Lyon in Group F, while in Group E, Bayern Munich host Benfica.
To rugby news now, and the man dubbed King of Sevens Rugby, Waisale Serevi, has been appointed the new head coach of the Russia Sevens national team. The Little Master was in charge of the Fiji national team as a player coach when Fiji won the 2005-2006 World Sevens Series. The first time the crown had been taken by a team other than New Zealand. The 50-year-old will be tasked to guide Russia back into a core team for the World Sevens Series. Russia last played as a core team in the 2017-2018 season when they got relegated after finishing last in the standings. Serevi will also be aiming to get Russia to the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. Tanzania's national beach soccer team have been crowned winners of the 2018 Copa Dar es Salaam tournament. This year's edition saw the Seychelles, Malawi, Tanzania and Uganda compete for a spot to play Egypt next year in the Beach Soccer World Cup qualifiers. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo.
Dar es Salaam is known for its beautiful white beaches. But for the Copa Dar es Salaam 2018, they've been transformed into soccer pitches.
Beach soccer now is a big game. Internationally and now even locally here. And historically, all people from coast regions, from Tanga all the way to Mtwara, they used to play this beach soccer.
This is a four-nation beach soccer tournament. Unlike traditional soccer, which has 11 players on the pitch, this is a five-a-side game. Teams from the Seychelles, Malawi, Tanzania and Uganda have been competing for the 2018 crown. But it was the host nation, Tanzania, that emerged victorious after defeating Uganda 2-1 in the finals.
The secret to my success is to listen to my coach. That's how I won this award of top scorer. Our expectations? Well, we're telling Tanzanians we're going to fight to make it to the World Cup.
Beach soccer experts say with this performance there's hope that Tanzania can make it to the 2019 FIFA Beach Soccer World Cup in Paraguay. The Copa here is part of the qualification route for African teams.
If Tanzania, the interest they pick on this, if they can stick to it, I think it will bring a lot of success. We should remember Rome was not built in a day.
Next up for the team is the 2018 African Beach Soccer Cup of Nations in December. But they know they have their work cut out, as they'll be competing against the best teams on the African continent. And a strong performance in this tournament could see them make it through to the 2019 Beach Soccer World Cup. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
And in boxing, reigning UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov has said that a potential fight with undefeated boxer Floyd Mayweather Jr. would be twice as interesting as Conor McGregor's bout with the American. Speaking at a press conference in Moscow to launch his autobiography, Nurmagomedov said the prospect of two undefeated fighters going head-to-head was an exciting prospect. The Russian, widely known as simply as Khabib, called out Mayweather in October, but the UFC's president Dana White has said they could only face off in a mixed martial arts fight and not inside a boxing ring, as was the case with McGregor.
Our combat would be twice as interesting. Two undefeated fighters. It would be very interesting to see who will fall or retreat. I know that some media and even some guys on my team think I don't stand a chance against Mayweather, but that's actually motivating.
And we leave it there on this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contact on your screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. Thank you for watching. Ramanyang is up next with Global Business Africa. But from me and the team here on Africa Live, bye-bye from Nairobi.